Frederick Deeg was born in 1736, the second child of three and the son of Andreas and Anna Dague. Frederick was born in the village of Weiler in the German state of Württemberg, which is on the northern slope of the Black Forest. Frederick and his ancestors had lived in this area for many generations. Predominantly a farming area, the Black Forest has also been known for the invention and building of cuckoo clocks. The first cuckoo clocks were made around 1738, 2 years after Frederick was born. Frederick's Germany for the last several centuries leading up to his birth had been in turmoil through wars, political change, and religious unrest. Half of Germany's people were killed. In the 1500s, inspired by Martin Luther, the founder of the Lutheran Church, the reformist movement grew rapidly in Germany. More and more people accepted Luther's teachings and those of other Reform leaders. Various groups organized and broke away from the Roman Catholic Church. The 1500s were a time of political turmoil as German princes separated from the Holy Roman Empire to rule their own states. Oppressed peasants began to organize and rebel against feudalism. As a result, changes in Christian doctrine took place in an environment of rapid social change in Germany. Local princes assumed complete sovereignty over a patchwork of some 300 states, which made it all too easy for Napoleon to come along in the early 19th century and start adding them to his scrapbook. This was the world in which Frederick grew up, political and religious chaos. Andreas, Frederick's father, applied for and received permission to leave the country in 1740. The permission was for himself, his wife, and their 3 sons. Andreas died before they were able to leave. The family remained in Germany. 13 years later, after his family had endured generations and generations in an ever-difficult land, Frederick Deeg, at the age of 17, and his older brother Andreas, 19, fulfilled what his father had wanted to do before he died. The 2 older brothers left for America, while the youngest brother, Philip, age 14, stayed at home to care for their widowed mother. Frederick and his brother Andreas left Weiler, Germany, traveling down the Rhine River to Holland. There they got on board a ship called the Eastern Branch and left Rotterdam. They sailed to England, stopping at the harbor of Cowes on White Island to get permission to travel to America. At this time they swore allegiance to the King of England. That oath would eventually be broken in the Revolutionary War. They then sailed to America, arriving at Philadelphia on October 3, 1753. The whole trip from Weiler to Philadelphia took about 7 months. Frederick would eventually marry 2 women who were traveling on the same ship. At a time when Protestants persecuted Catholics, Catholics persecuted Protestants, and both persecuted Quakers and Jews, William Penn established an American sanctuary which protected freedom of conscience. Almost everywhere else, colonists stole land from the Indians, but Penn traveled unarmed among the Indians and negotiated peaceful purchases. He insisted that women deserved equal rights with men. He gave Pennsylvania a written constitution which limited the power of government, provided a humane penal code, and guaranteed many fundamental liberties. Penn became convinced that religious toleration couldn't be achieved in England. He went to the king and asked for a charter enabling him to establish an American colony. On March 4, 1681, Charles II signed a charter for territory west of the Delaware River and north of Maryland, approximately the present size of Pennsylvania, where about 1,000 Germans, Dutch, and Indians lived without any particular government. Penn faced tough challenges defending Pennsylvania back in England. There was a lot at stake because Pennsylvania had become the best hope for persecuted people in England, France, and Germany. Penn's policy of religious toleration and peace, no military conscription, attracted all kinds of war-weary European immigrants. With the influence of religious and economic freedom, Frederick chose Pennsylvania to settle in, a state growing with German Lutheran immigrants. He felt at home away from home. Frederick married Sophia Schmidt on June 22, 1755, at the Trinity Lutheran Church in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. The Trinity Lutheran Church was erected in 1734 and was one of the earliest Lutheran churches in America. The building eventually became too small for the congregation, and on May 18, 1761, the cornerstone of the present church was laid. Frederick and Sophia had 2 children, Catherine Elizabeth Dague and Michael Dague. Sophia died 4 years after they were married. At 23 years old, with 2 young children, Frederick married Anna Marie Geisler on August 19, 1760. They eventually had 9 children, plus Frederick's 2 previous children. Frederick and Anna's children were Matthias, Katharina, Christina, Frederick, Mary Magdalena, John, Margaret, Andrew, and Susanna. Frederick moved his new family to Washington County, Pennsylvania, and purchased 443 acres of farmland, costing him £30, 18 shillings, and 9 pence. Frederick built a 2-story log cabin on his property that survived for over 200 years. The Revolutionary War began in April 1775. On July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was signed. Frederick and his 2 older sons, Michael and Matthias, served as privates in Captain George Meyer's company of the Washington County Militia in 1781 and 1782. The Revolutionary War ended soon after the Dagues joined the militia. In 1791, Congress placed an excise tax on the sale of whiskey. The tax, ranging from 7 to 18 cents per gallon, was a direct tax on the people who made and sold whiskey. The tax was intended to help shift resources from individuals to national programs such as building roads and post offices and supporting a Western defense. Farmers in western Pennsylvania, where Frederick Deeg resided, felt threatened by the tax, and many refused to pay it. To them, whiskey was not an industry, but a currency. They exchanged whiskey as if it were money because actual money was often scarce. Some farmers called for the abolishment of the tax because they believed it was imposed unfairly on people in only one part of the country. Others thought of themselves as patriots for refusing to pay taxes, in the same way that the American colonists had refused to pay tariffs to England. In 1794, hundreds of farmers staged a violent uprising, the Whiskey Rebellion, to protest the tax. President Washington took steps to stop the rebellion. He and 13,000 militia members from the eastern states, under the direction of General Harry Lee, who was the governor of Virginia and father of Robert E. Lee, marched into western Pennsylvania. The Whiskey Rebellion was the first test of the federal government's constitutional power to tax. Some criticized Washington for sending troops to face American citizens, but his actions enforced the federal government's authority. Washington made the point that the Constitution is the law of the land and must be obeyed. Lee issued a proclamation that offered amnesty to those who admitted to being part of the rebellion and would take an oath of allegiance to the United States. On December 29, 1794, Frederick Deeg signed the Oath of Allegiance. Frederick died October 12, 1796, at the age of 60. His wife died 19 years later. Frederick had the courage to leave Germany at a time when Europe offered little hope for economic, political, intellectual, and religious advancement. He took the first steps to offer the Dague family a better way of life. At least 2 million and perhaps as many as 3 million descendants of Frederick Deeg were given a better opportunity to reach their goals at the moment Frederick settled in America.